Hello, everybody, and welcome to Georgia North. I'm sorry, I mean Philadelphia. To be fair, with the amount of Georgia players that Howie Roseman has drafted the last 2 years, it really does start to feel like that Philadelphia is becoming the breeding ground for Georgia players. At the very least, it might make me switch my lines from the University of Florida next football season. It is nice to joke about that, considering the way that the Phillies and Sixers are playing right now. But we'll get on to that on this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last episode of Season 23 here on Sports Talk Philadelphia. To wrap up our last episode of the season, we've got a full panel for the first time in a while. Starting on my immediate left is Libby. Libby, how are you?
I'm good. Sad it's my last show, but very excited to be here.
Yes, Libby will be graduating, but we'll give her a proper send-off. Before we do that, we'll introduce the rest of our panel. Shane, how are you doing?
Doing good.
Good, and then we have Mike. Mike, how are you?
Doing good. Good to be back.
Good, it's good to have you back. So to start off, we will be going into the Sixers again, and it's been a little bit of a weird stretch for them the last two games. They did win the first game, 119-115. Without Joel Embiid, James Harden put up a great number of 45 points, which tried his playoff career high, and DeAnthony Melton had a great game off the bench with 17 points. Game two, not so good. The Sixers lost 127-85, just a brutal blowout. And Mike, I'm going to start with you. It's been weird, these two games. What is your takeaway from these first two matchups?
Yeah, it's like total opposite. I mean, after game one, everybody's, on the high of, this team, James Harden's back and, all this stuff. And then game two happens and then, they put on that show. And, I think all of us fans, we wanted to split, but I think once you win game one, we wanted to win game two. And I think that's why they went with Embiid, because you could have sat him and just rested him until they lost the game, really. But they didn't do that. But I think this was more trying to get Embiid, back in the offense, back in the swing of things, and hopefully this can get him ready for game three.
Yeah, so it is an important note that Embiid did not play in game one. James Harden really stepped up, Libby, and that could be a huge sign going forward for the Sixers.
Yeah, he absolutely did step up. It was an incredible game for Harden, and the bench contributed. There were a lot of people, when you know that your now MVP is going to be out, you have to do something about it. So they worked really hard. They played excellent defense every play. They were hustling. It was an overall great performance, and Harden filled Embiid's shoes. And in game two, it was a little bit tough to watch from him trying to be the superhero again. But game one, he's the reason we won. So.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the interesting narrative around James Harden. He is such a great player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. And he does have these great playoff games. But, Libby, like you just said, he then has duds immediately after. And it's very weird why he's so inconsistent.
Yeah, it was strange. And watching yesterday, it was, okay, I'm going to try to hit the same shot that I hit at the end of the game in game one. Well, not every shot needs to be that big and that opportunity. It's pass the ball. You can drive into the lane and get shots, and that's fine. But you can't try to score 45 points 2 games in a row. It's like he was trying a little bit too hard. So you got to pass the ball around because you have a talented team. When you have Embiid back, you have that weapon, and it's not going to be all on one guy.
Yeah, and Libby, you also mentioned that the bench played really well in game one, and again in game two, that just didn't happen. Mike, what needs to happen for the Sixers to be consistent enough to win this series?
I mean, one is just Embiid just needs to. He needs to get as healthy as possible. I don't know how healthy that is. We're hearing 60, 70%. Who knows? But getting him healthy as possible is the most important. And if he's not, just what we saw in game one, like Libby was saying, the bench, Harden, Melton, those guys have to step up, especially because it doesn't seem like this injury is going away anytime soon.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff I could have mentioned in the teaser. This is one that was huge in the last couple of days, is that Joel Embiid won MVP for the first time in his career. Got 73 first-place votes, which is just amazing, considering how well Jokic played as well. He's the fifth Sixer to be named MVP. He did miss game one. And in game two, he played all right, 15 points, 5 blocks, 3 rebounds in that really bad 127-85 loss. So, Libby, the stats in that game were not great. The 5 blocks, though, were just amazing.
Oh, they were posters. It was really cool to watch. He only played 27 minutes, but I liked that they restricted him a little bit. It was definitely a call from Doc Rivers to play him. I like what Mike said about they probably needed to. You want to win both games, but you want him to be healthy. So, he stayed back a little bit and, still scored 15 points, but the 5 blocks were really game-changing, and if the Sixers could have made a couple more shots, I think they would have really impacted the turnout of the game.
Yeah, so with Embiid winning MVP, he is now on the same list as guys like Wilt, Iverson, Malone. So, Mike, Embiid is up there because he won MVP. I feel like he also has to win a championship or get to a championship to be on that same level as those guys.
Yeah, the narrative that even now before his career is over is, if he can stay healthy and about winning the championships. And until he does that, unfortunately, that's just going to be the narrative around him. But winning MVP in the NBA, it's not an easy thing to do. I think we should be grateful that we have him, but I think the talk is going to be until he wins a championship.
Yeah, that is going to be a lot of talk around that. And when you look through the rest of the playoffs, it's not going to be easy for the Sixers if they can even get past the Celtics. The Heat and Knicks are tied at 1. I believe the Heat will win that series when Jimmy Butler comes back healthy, but that is a question mark because it's an ankle injury. And in the West, the Nuggets are just demolishing the Suns 2-0, and the Lakers beat the Warriors in what will be expected to be a very big series. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, it's fun to look ahead about who the Sixers could play in the next round, but do you think they even get past the Celtics at this point?
After game 1, yes. After last night, I don't know. This team's just so up and down. It's just after every game. That's how they perform each game. That's just what I'm going off of now. And this, I know, like you said, we don't like looking ahead, but the path is there. If they can get past the Celtics, get past the Celtics. They have home court. It's there. And so, but the Celtics is the hard part. So we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, and it is good for the Sixers that they won't have to face the Milwaukee Bucks if they move past this. But the biggest issue, Libby, is that the Heat have been playing really well, especially with Jimmy Butler.
Yes, they have been playing well with Jimmy Butler. I am so scared of Jimmy Butler. That's a tough matchup, and like Mike said, I think that the Celtics are the toughest matchup that they have. But if you move past this with Embiid fatigued even more, if he can stay healthy, and you've got the Jimmy Butler question as well, but if everybody stays healthy, it's still not an easy win. When you get to this point of the playoffs, it's kind of anybody's game, and it's who can stay in it and stay focused and have the stamina to get through what are going to be long series now. So it frightens me a bit, but you got to look at the next game on Friday. They're going to be at home, and you got to hope that those Phillies fans can give Boston some heck and get a win.
Yeah, Boston has been a team that has traumatized a lot of Sixers fans throughout every generation, and it does feel like this will be a 7-game series, but again, looking ahead, because we won't know what happens because it'll be on summer break when the finals start. If the Sixers do make it to the finals, Mike, I'm going to start with you. Which Western Conference team would you want to play?
Would I want to play? Probably the Nuggets. That's a hard one. That's a hard one on the spot. Probably the Nuggets, but that's so hard to choose. But probably the Nuggets. They're all good.
Yeah. Libby, what about you?
I would also say the Nuggets,
Yeah.
but they're playing so well right
Yeah,
now.
that's such a hard question. Yeah, it's so hard to choose. What do you think?
I want to say Nuggets, but they haven't lost a playoff game yet.
Yeah,
They're 6-0 right now.
yeah.
Right now, I'm going to say the Suns because they're the only team that are down 0-2.
Well, it's also either want to play Curry, LeBron, or Durant.
Right.
Pick your poison.
Yeah, Jokic finished second for
Yeah.
MVP.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's not easy, and the thought that I always had was that whoever won the Eastern Conference would be the champion. I'm not so sure about that anymore, especially with the Kings and Memphis, who were the higher seeds, losing. But the Lakers and Warriors are really getting back to where everyone thought they were going to be. Again, this Lakers-Warriors series is going to be one of the most prolific, highly watched games that is not a final series. So a lot of great playoff basketball to watch, especially the Sixers series. We'll keep an eye on that. We're now going to go, though, to the Phillies. The Eagles first before we go to the Phillies, because the Eagles actually had a draft and good stuff to talk about for them. They had a great draft, and like I mentioned in the teaser, a lot of Georgia players. 3, including their first overall pick, Jalen Carter, who they got by trading up a pick with the Bears. They also got Nolan Smith with their next pick, which was also first round. Sidney Brown was a great pick from Illinois. Ringo from Georgia as a cornerback was their other guy. And they also got a quarterback in Tanner McKee from Stanford. So there's everyone there. I'm not going to go through everyone. You can read it up on the video. But, Mike, I'm going to start with you. What is your grade for the draft after the 3 days?
Oh, I think a solid A+. I think Howie Roseman did everything that he needed to do, and I think, the whole talk was if they were going to go after Bijan or a running back early, and I think if you know Howie, I think a lot of people knew that wasn't going to happen, and Bijan got taken anyway, but I think how they ended up with both Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith is just I think an A+ just in general with that. But then you add guys like Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo, and then Steen, who are could be starters either in year one or just in the future. I mean, I think it was a great draft. You addressed all your needs, and I'm happy that Carter fell that far to them.
Yeah, and you're getting 3 Georgia players along with Kobe Dean and Jordan Davis, who you drafted last year. This was a team that won the championship in 2021. So, Libby, you're basically putting an entire roster of Georgia players that won a championship on the same professional roster. That's almost unheard of.
Yeah, welcome to Georgia. I mean, pretty impressive, and it's not a bad call. You have guys coming in that have some camaraderie with a Super Bowl contender last year with the Eagles, so playoff experience in 2 different ways. I love it. It's like Mike said, I think A+ on Howie Roseman's part. Really excellent draft. You got the weapons that you needed that you can develop, who can either start this year or in the future. But yeah, really great work.
Yeah, and I think it is pretty important to note that the Eagles could have traded up to get Bijan Robinson, but they waited until he was picked and then moved up with the Bears, when the Bears could have also drafted Jalen Carter. So just great movement by the Eagles throughout this entire draft. One interesting note that came up was that the Arizona Cardinals had to give up a pick because of tampering with former Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon. The week before the Super Bowl, the Cardinals reached out to Gannon. That is an infringement of the tampering policy in the NFL. So the Eagles got the Cardinals' 66th overall pick and traded their 94th overall pick and a 2024 5th pick. And they used that pick to get Sidney Brown. I will say it is important to note before we overhype this entire thing that if Gannon had already talked to the Cardinals before the championship week, this wouldn't have been tampering. So it's just the fact that the Cardinals reached out the one time before the championship instead of twice. So, Mike, even with all that happening, it is great that the Eagles were able to get the 66th pick and get a really good defensive player in Sidney out of this.
Yeah, and who knows what happened? He's on the Cardinals now. It's over. But I'm glad that we did, like you said, Sidney Brown. That's a great pick. I'm seeing comparisons to Brian Dawkins, which that's such a high comparison to compare to, but that's a good sign that people are comparing to him. So I like the pick, and like I said, with all these picks, I think Howie did a great job.
Yeah, so again, there is a lot of talk about this. Libby, I feel like the reason most people want to jump on Gannon more is because of what happened in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. You can't help but think if there was some issues there. It's an interesting situation, and the NFL has rules for a reason. I'm glad they stepped in and this was able to be reconciled, but I don't know. Okay, Eagles, they didn't win the Super Bowl. It's over. I think you move on from here. You got a great player, and see you later.
Yeah, and that was basically what Howie Roseman said too, is that he was tired of answering questions about the Super Bowl. He just wanted to move on. And I think that going through what he did in the draft, he definitely moved on and is ready for this season. The other thing that the Eagles did that was interesting is not draft a running back, which, again, most people thought they were going to get Bijan Robinson, but they traded from later with DeAndre Swift, which was a great trade, in my opinion. Got him from the Lions for just a 7th-round pick that they gave up and a 2025 4th overall pick, and they got the 249th pick in this trade, which they used to get Moro Ojomo from Texas in the 7th round, who has a lot of there's a lot of praise about him for being a 7th-round pick. Swift last year, 542 yards, 5 TDs last season with the Lions, was out for 3 games with injury, and now that makes the Eagles running backs with Swift, Rashard Penny, who they traded for this year from the Seattle Seahawks, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott. So, Libby, this went from being a very weak part of the Eagles to now in the offseason being a very strong part to the roster.
Yeah, and like I said last week, you get rid of Miles Sanders, and that was a pretty strong part of your offense. So I like that they're stacking this position. Running backs get hurt. Every position does, but it's something that you want to have a little bit of depth in. So I like that they made that decision to be certain that they have multiple players to fit in that role.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are going to talk about the player that was taken in Swift, but I think it's important, too, that getting Ojomo, that shouldn't be lost on anyone. Yes, it's a 7th-round pick, Mike, but getting Brown through a trade with the Cardinals, getting Ojomo, the Eagles are really capitalizing on these trades that they made during the draft.
Yeah, Howie Roseman's just doing a great job, and I think he's just seeing everything from the reaction around the league. Some of these GMs are getting mad that he's making all this possible, and it's incredible. And we're just happy to have him here, and hopefully this just correlates to wins and another Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, so Mike, I already asked Libby this, but going to you, how do you feel about the running backs now? Yes, there's 2 guys on the roster that are very injury prone, but it feels like that this is more of a strength now.
Yeah, I mean, even with the Swift trade, it's more, and the Penny, really, the low risk, high reward. And I know both of them have dealt with injuries, but Swift, when healthy, I mean, he's a Philly kid. When healthy, he's good. I mean, we saw it in college. We saw it in spurts with the Lions. I think he's a perfect, pairing up with Penny, and hopefully they can just stay healthy. That's all we can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles could have just decided to give Miles Sanders a huge contract, and that would have been the end of the story. But what they decided to do is go for these, like Mike said, low-risk, high-reward guys. And then you have 2 solid guys in Gainwell and Scott who have been on the roster, played with the Super Bowl team. To me, this is just a lot of really good move by the Eagles. I'm very excited for where we're at now. And guys, I'm going to ask you, you've got to feel, I'm assuming similar in that this is very well done by the Eagles.
Yeah, it is. You don't have to completely rely on your running backs in this offense because you have Jalen Hurts and you have excellent receivers. So if they can take a little bit of risk with their running backs and, figure out who the best fit is moving forward, you have a little bit of leeway. So I think they were definitely smart in that decision.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I know all these guys, I think they all add up to Miles Sanders' contract. So you're getting all these guys for what you would have paid Sanders. So I think that just that in alone is good because Sanders, he's injury prone himself too. So.
Yeah, definitely good financial moves by the Eagles, good draft moves. It will be very exciting for the season, especially coming off that great run they had last year. We're now going to go to the one team that is not going to be fun to talk about, but we're going to have to do it anyway, in the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, they played so well against Houston. They won the first 2. Everything was feeling great. They were finally over 500. And then they proceeded to lose the next 4, including getting swept by the Dodgers, in which they allowed 36 runs in the 3 games, including back-to-back 13-run losses. Shane, what is going on right now?
They're not hitting the ball. Defense is bad. The pitching is bad, obviously. I mean, in that Dodgers series is completely awful. The first night, Taijuan Walker could not find the strike zone whatsoever. The bullpen didn't help when they had to come in. Obviously, defense wasn't great. There was 2 back-to-back games, and Mundo Sosa made 2 defensive errors that they counted as hits, but shouldn't have been. And once again, Aaron Nola wasn't great. He almost blew another 5-0 lead. He had a 5-0 lead. When he came out, it was 5-4, and it was just an all-around embarrassing series against the Dodgers by the Phillies.
Yeah, Mike, I was able to pull up the Game 1 highlights from the Astros series because it was a great start, and then things just have totally fallen apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 separate teams we watched. I mean, the start of the season was kind of a struggle, but you thought they were starting to get things rolling against the Mariners and the Astros, and then, like Shane said, this Dodgers series was just terrible. Aaron Nola has not been good. Starting pitching in general, really, besides Wheeler, who's been better recently, has just been bad. Taijuan Walker's contract's looking terrible. I mean, I know it's just the first month. We're overreacting probably, but it has not been good to watch, especially these last 3 games. Yeah,
and we're going to now look at the standings for the Phillies, and they're still in 4th. They're only a game and a half back of the 2 third-place teams, and the Mets and Marlins who are tied. They are 6.5 back of the Braves. And yes, it is only the beginning of the 2nd month of the season, but Libby, they're not looking a whole lot better than we thought they were going to be at this point.
No, they are not. The pitching is really hard to watch. You have last night where it's the 9th inning, you have 2 outs and you're losing, and then they get a run and then give up a grand slam to lose. Okay, well that's demoralizing. You don't have a lot of confidence. Bryce Harper comes back and you get swept, giving up that many runs. So I think it really does start with the pitching. When you give up 13 runs 2 games in a row, you can't come back from that. So they've got to figure out something there. And, Bryce Harper's playing well so far, but how much can he really do with this given situation?
Yeah, and Shane, it's so weird because they are playing so flat. And Rob Thompson, that's something that I mentioned earlier this year, is that he is a new manager. He's going to make mistakes. Putting Kimberlin in the 9th inning to save that game and then him giving up a grand slam, that was not a good move. And most people seem to know that wasn't going to be a good move.
Yeah, no, I didn't like that move. I don't like Kimbrel pitching in the 9th inning because he's not the pitcher he once was a couple years ago. He's older and he just can't really throw anymore. He loses velocity, and to me, I think they probably should have brought in Gregory Soto because he has been better since he's been brought up. and I mean, it was the wrong move for the Phillies.
Yeah, the one move that has worked out is keeping Nick Castellanos when so many fans last year were asking to trade him because he is playing very well this year. He's got a 309 batting average, 4 home runs, 20 RBIs. He's hit his last 4 home runs in the last 11 games, so his only home runs in the last 11. He's batting fourth right now for Harper, and he made a great defensive play in Houston too. So, Mike, he's now looking like a complete baseball player, which we didn't see before he got to the Phillies.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what happened last year with the struggles, and then in the World Series, his defense starting to show a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that rob that we just saw there was just, that rob of the home run was just so great to see. And his defense has been a struggle for him, but he's definitely improved. But what he's done better is just at the plate, and that's what the Phillies needed, and they need him to do that even with Harper coming back now.
Yeah, he's been much more patient at the plate, and it's been great to see. Shane, do you like him batting fourth with Harper coming back?
I do. I mean, I feel like he's comfortable. He's hitting very well in that spot, and he's very comfortable right now. So there's no point in moving him away from that spot. And I mean, this is more people will get on base for him, so he's going to be able to drive in more RBIs and stuff like that. He is hitting very well with people on base as well. So yeah, I think he should stay in the fourth hole.
Yeah. So that move seems to be all right, but having Schwarber lead off when you have a guy like Bryson Stott who's batting very well, or Brandon Marsh, Libby, it's sort of weird that they keep going back to this idea of Schwarber leading off because it doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting play, and especially with Harper coming back, you've got a lot of people batting well. So, I mean, we're a month in and we're not having a lot of success. I know that they kept the lineup pretty similar last year, and they did have success with it, but I don't think it's a bad thing to try to switch it up a little bit off of him and batting first.
And we didn't really make this point this episode, but Ranger Suarez is supposed to be coming back. Andrew Painter is expected to join the rotation at some point when he gets healthy. So there is more artillery coming in for the pitching staff. But to me, and I think that a lot of you guys would agree as well, the pitching needs to get better before then.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's been the biggest problem is the starting pitching. And when you have Wheeler and Nolo, those are guys that you would think will get on track. So hopefully this is just the first month and, they can get it rolling.
Shane, do you think that they can get it on track before those guys start to come back?
I think they can. I mean, Ranger Suarez is supposed to come back, I think, next week or so. So I think they can. The weather's going to get warmer, so they will be able to hit the ball out of the ballpark, which his team is built around. So
yeah, hopefully the Phillies do get better because they need to fast before things go really downhill. We're now going to jump into Fast Five and start with our always favorite segment, Talking Baseball with Shane Nolan.
So I seen this tweet last week that I didn't think it was real, but it turns out it is. And for MLB, for anybody if the team believes that a player is going to receive a standing ovation, like Bryce Harper probably will tomorrow, playing in Philadelphia for the first game back since the playoffs, they have to send in a 24-hour notice that they believe that team is going to, that player is going to get a standing ovation so they don't get a pitch clock violation.
That is interesting because that has been an issue. Pitch clock. It's exciting to have in baseball. This is a weird one.
It is. I mean, because I think Cody Bellinger got a standing ovation when he returned to Dodger Stadium, and he got a strike called on him for a pitch clock violation. It's just kind of like, you shouldn't have to do this. Like, the umpire should be able to read the room and everything. So.
Yeah, that is an interesting move. We're going to go back to Shane with hockey this time, though. The Bruins have finished with the most wins ever in an NHL season, most points ever, lost in 7 games to the Panthers. Shane, what is your reaction to this?
I was very surprised by this. I had the Bruins winning the Cup. They finished with 135 points, the most ever inside NHL history, and the Panthers with 92 points. And it was a 43-point gap between those two, the last wildcard spot and the best team in the league.
Yeah, it was very shocking. This whole playoffs for the NHL is very shocking, but it usually always is, which makes it one of the most fun playoffs to watch in the sport. Also, the Rangers lost, by the way, so sort of a little bit happy about that. It makes up for the Flyers playing not well this year. Not really, but it helps a little bit. We're now going to go to Mike with NBA playoffs. Like I mentioned in the NBA segment with the Sixers, this Lakers-Warriors series might be the most watched series ever. Do you think that it will live up to the hype, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have Stephen Curry versus LeBron James, it's going to attract, viewers. It's going to attract basketball fans. And the game one was so fun to watch, and I'm excited for tonight. And, it probably is the best non-finals because we're getting this matchup in the second round. So these playoffs, like you said with hockey, NBA has also been great, and I'm looking forward to tonight and the rest of the series. Yeah,
something that I've been saying about this series is I'm sure that Adam Silver and the rest of the staff for the NBA wishes this was a conference finals matchup and not just the second round of the playoffs, but I'm sure they'll get whatever they can take, and this will be a very exciting series to watch. Already game one was just amazing, so I'm very excited to see where the rest of the series goes. We're now going to go to Libby with our last golf segment, maybe ever. I guess we'll find out next year, but the Wells Fargo Championship is happening this weekend, Libby, and who do you have as your favorite?
Yeah, so Max Homa won it last year. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be in the running this year, but my pick is Sahith Theegala. He's excellent. This is his second year on the tour. Excellent young player. He finished top 10 in the Masters. He's playing well in round one, so I would pick him. We've also got Rory McIlroy. Happy birthday, Rory McIlroy. He's took a week off, or a few weeks off after the Masters for mental health and personal purposes, and coming back, he's 3 under on day one, looking to improve on missing the cut at the Masters. So he's somebody to look out for, but Theegala is definitely my pick for this one.
Yeah, a lot of great players in this one, definitely one to watch. And we're now going to wrap up with our last segment of the season. For those of you that don't know, Libby will be graduating, so she will not be returning to the desk next year. I know you already said your goodbye on SportsLine, so I don't need this too drawn out, but do you have any last words before you officially sign off on LaSalle TV?
Yeah, I really, all of you, Aidan, Shane, and Mike, thank you so much for having me on this year. This semester has been so much fun. If you know me, you know I love talking about sports. I will ramble, and I hype up my Sixers whenever I get the chance. So the opportunity to have a camera in front of me and excellent, co-hosts to ask me questions, it's just a ton of fun, and I've really enjoyed it. So to all of LaSalle TV, I've really found my voice here and grown so much as a person. To all of our crew and Tanya, our station manager, for keeping it together. I really appreciate everything.
Yeah, I mean, you also are on a show where you ad-lib and you had to jump off ad-libbing. How was that experience?
Yeah, it's definitely fun. I love the ad-lib. With my other show, we have all prompter, so it's all written out for me. It makes me think and, it gets me on my toes. It's a lot of fun. A little different, but I've really loved it.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a great job, so we're happy that you joined us this semester. Mike and Shane, I'm looking forward to working with you guys next semester. And Mike, you're graduating in December, right?
Yep, so you got one more semester.
Yes, so we'll make sure you have your own side off too, but we'll worry about that later. That wraps up this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching this season. We will actually be keeping track of our social media, so definitely make sure to follow us this summer on SportsTalk LTV on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. We're now going to sign off on season 23, and as always, go Phillies.